speaking of things at scale, let's talk about this thing because like on the surface, this thing that you recently did like a year ago is incredibly silly and not worth your time. But basically, I think a year and a half ago, Wordle is like a game an online game is like a word game that went viral. You built a thing called Wordplay. Is it wordplay.com? It's wordplay.com, right?
Wordplay.com, yeah.
By the way, you buy domain names, so you bought thehustle.com for us. You bought me copythat.com. Thank you for that. I forgot to say thank you in person, but so you buy like a lot of amazing domains. But you have wordplay.com, and did you tweet that it was getting 7 million users a week or 3? What was the number?
Well, I just went and checked the numbers. Okay, so just to kind of place the timeline in frame. So November and December of last year, 2021, is when Wordle took off. And January is when it really kind of hit its, I think, close to its peak. And that's roughly when the New York Times acquired Wordle. And a couple things kind of, I mean, it was fine. I think it was great outcome for Josh Wordle. But there were things that were kind of bothering me that were limitations in the game. And I was an avid player of the game. And now it's like, okay, well, the New York Times has bought it. There's no way that anything's going to happen for like years, if ever. So that was kind of thing number one. Thing number two, like it had been a while since I had launched like some simple free thing publicly. Hadn't gone through the process, and there were other things I wanted to learn. It's like, I want to learn more about Vercel and Next.js and TypeScript and things like that. So it's like, okay, well, this is a excuse. And then that intersected with the third thing, which was like the dominant variable in the equation, is my son was taking a Python programming class. He's 11, right? He's going through this process. And for him, it's still very abstract. He's learning programming. He enjoys everything involving technology and screens, but it was abstract. So on a Saturday night, I said, okay, well, let me build something. And Python happens to be my language. Build something so he can see, because he plays Wordle, he knows the game. And so I started on a Saturday night with a deadline for Sunday that I'm going to launch something with him tomorrow. We're going to have Google Analytics on it. So we're going to launch it. I'm going to launch it by tweeting it. And so he knows what social media is, right? He's, so I'm like, we've got this thing that didn't exist yesterday. I wrote the code over the course of last night in Python, the language that you're learning, and we're going to launch it. And now you can see users coming in, right? You can see and so now what I want him to have in his head is that when through the course of his life, as he encounters problems that are solvable with software, which is a lot, like it's actually tactile for him. It's like, I don't know, I don't have the skills right now to do what Dad just did, but I know it's possible. I know it's possible because he did it in the span of 24 hours, right? So if I want to go off and build a video game, I want to go off and build some tool for my school, I want to build some social network for whatever it is, it feels like now it's more approachable for him. He's got years to go before he'll get to that level. But anyway, so those three things sort of came together. And so we launched it on that Sunday. This is, I think, in February or so, give or take. And since then, it's had like 45 million games have been played. 9.5 million people have come through it. Any given moment in time right now, if I were to look at the Google Analytics, it'd be 2,000-3,000 people playing like right now, which...
How did it get so much traffic? Where did the traffic come from?
Well, it helps that I have a social media following, right? I've got 1 million followers on LinkedIn. I've got 300,000 on Twitter. So there's that. There are some viral elements.
That's a lot, but that's not... I wouldn't have thought that... Yeah, it's not enough for that, is it? How many users do you think got from that?
In the early days, all of them,
was it
right?
big? Was it big right off the bat? Like the first week, was it big? I know the first day, probably a bunch of people checked it out, but like I'm sure you posted it, and that was the big surge. So what was like the first week roughly? Do you remember?
The first week was probably maybe 50 to 100,000. So it wasn't a lot, but it was something. But then it's like once you kind of get into it, this is the kind of power of iteration. Is that one of the things that I found missing in the original Wordle was that it was a single player game. Like you played once a day, and that was it. So two big changes that we made in Wordplay. One was it was unlimited play. You didn't have to play just once a day. And two, it allowed you to challenge your friends. So you could say, I just played this word. I solved it in 4 turns. Here's my score, and send literally a simple link to anyone or a group on. And this happens tens of thousands of times, right? Like someone will take a link that they just played. They were really proud of their score. And then their family, they can post it to their WhatsApp group. They can post it there, wherever they want, and say, I invite you to like beat my score kind of thing. And so that's the viral element. And so then as more people play, you can track that as you might have as a Google Analytics event and say, how many times are people clicking that share button and issuing challenges to other people? And so that once you can kind of get into something where there's a compounding effect on the user base, so as the user base grows, and so now the thing I'm fighting though, right, is that so that's happening, that's going well, but then the interest in Wordle and related games is waning because everything has its kind of peak and its ebb, and so but. It's been an interesting exercise. And so on the kind of learning path, one of the things I hadn't done in a while is like, okay, well, what's traffic actually worth? Let's say I had to make a living on this thing or make the company, quote unquote, or project profitable. So I put Google AdSense on it, which is the easiest thing to do, and discovered that like, if I weren't bothered by the fact that there would be 2 ads on the main game board page, if I were solving for monetization, it was like $90,000 a month in Google AdSense based on the traffic. Yep.
Wow. I thought you were going to say way less.
Yeah, I thought he was going to say like $5,000 a month, but 90 grand a month, and you only have your only costs are hosting, right?
Yeah, and my time, right?
First of all, Sean, go to wordplay.com and then go to like the about page. His about page is incredibly well written. It's wonderful copywriting. It's wonderful. You've got a wonderful voice. It says, I'll just read the first sentence, but it says, "Why would you do this?" Or the better yet, why would I do this? That's a really good question. My wife asked me the same question, and then you like go on to explain why. You're quite a good writer for also being like this amazing engineer. Typically, those things
I went to a power writing course that Sean put on. You know that, right? It's like I'm getting around here with my
alumni. I like to say I taught Dharmesh everything he knows, even before he met me. I somehow taught him all that good stuff before he built HubSpot.
What do you, so this was making 90 grand a month maybe, or about, what do you, is this your,
it could, it's not, right? There's no, I don't see it.
I turned ads off because that's sort of not the point. And people were asking me, like, Dharmesh, why do you have ads on this thing? I'm like, to learn. Like, it's like, I've learned what I needed to learn so I can.
Was tweeting and LinkedIn, posting this on LinkedIn the only way you got users? What do you think this could sell for right now? And is this the biggest side project you've ever created?
Our buddy tried to buy it. Sully tried to buy it off you.
Did he really?
He tweeted out. He's like, "I'd like to buy this off you. I've built mobile games before." He was like semi-serious at least. I don't know if you talked to him or not, but
I did not.
What do you think you could sell? What do you think, like, if you cared, what do you think you could sell it for? $2 or $3 million, maybe.
Right now, that let's say the ad revenue would go down to like 50,000 or something like that, because I haven't turned Google AdSense in a while. That's $600,000 a year. Apply a 5x multiple. So somewhere between $2 and $10 million would be my guess if that's what I was solving for. So it's. And
is this was posting it on LinkedIn and Twitter the only way that you got users, or did you do some other weird hacks?
I had my blog, it's like, I'm a big believer in like, what folks call like the flywheel. There's all these little things that are attached to the flywheel, right? It's like, oh, well, LinkedIn helps a little bit, puts a little energy. Twitter does a little bit, and then I have my blog and the email goes out, and there's like things that I sort of do. Yeah, so it helps, but it's like the hardest part is that cold start problem. Like, how do you get your first 100,000 people, 100 to 1,000 people? And then it's the matter of like tracking the retention rate on those users. Do they come back? The other thing that's been interesting about Wordplay as far as the lesson learned is that, when it started, the average time a user spent, according to Google, was roughly 4 minutes on the game. Okay. In the early weeks. And now that number is at 14 minutes is the average time a user spends, across however many 1,000 users come in a given day. So,
right.
What and is this the biggest side project you've ever created?
Depends on how you measure it. So technically, no, not in terms of just like raw traffic. I've built graders and things like that before that have done better. But
what have you built what side project have you built outside of HubSpot that gets more traffic than 2 or 3 million people a month?
I don't really do side projects. This is my first one that was like clearly because it was a game. Had it been anything other than a game, I would have rationalized some way to bring it into the HubSpot umbrella because I like to have like all my eggs in that basket. But just given the circumstances here, it didn't really make sense. And even now, like I'm thinking about doing a kind of a marketing and sales related edition of Wordplay, right? It's like, the entire list of words, or do it based on MarTech companies. Like, okay, do you know the players in the space kind of thing? And then you can get sponsorships or whatever. Anyway, but yeah, Website Grader was this kind of a project where it was like a free, I really like low friction things that people can come to the website. And this is why my son and I were chatting yesterday, because we're looking at Flutter, this new development environment and language. Dart's the language, but Flutter is the app framework for building mobile apps across iOS and Android and things. It's what the cool new kids are learning. And he's like, no, why would I ever want to build a mobile app? That's like something people have to download. And I have to get approval from, Apple to kind of post my, like, I want to like to just do it like immediately. He's got, and he's right. It's like, okay, anyway. So that's the wordplay story. It's been a lot of fun. And it's hard to know with these things, like where the road leads. Like wordplay itself may or may not kind of connect back to other things, whatever. But the things I've learned through it, I think will. It's like, okay, well, here's what it takes to build this kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, then I'm using it to play around with community. It's like, okay, can I take the wordplay user base, what are the things they care about, and build a community around wordplay using one of the existing kind of community platforms, and see if that's a thing, right? It's like, okay, if you could aggregate people with like interests, that in of itself has value. And I want it to be something that kind of self-runs, but we'll see.
If you were, I'm going to ask Dharmesh, if Sam had built this as a side project and he was at the same point you're at right now, what would you like kind of advise him to do? If it was Sam's project and you were just kind of an outsider, said, oh, that's really cool, you did that. And it sounds like you've kind of reached this point where you don't really have a direction of where it's going to go next. What would you kind of tell Sam?
Decide what you want to do, which is, okay, do you want to like take this to the next level and you turn it into a $100 billion business, spin it off, or decide that it's just going to be a personal project. And just like my personal blog is, and I've made that decision. It's like, I'm not going to try and monetize and hire employees. I'm not going to do any of those things, right? It's going to be, and my son will continue to act as head of product because he's the one that tests the thing every morning. And we play tournaments every evening. That's the big new feature that's coming out, is the multi-round tournaments. By the way, in terms of like, I think half of what I know, Sean, I learned from you. The other half I learned from MFM, right? It's like, so one of the things is around chess.com, which you guys talked about, which I've been a member and player on for 10 plus years. I knew of the site. But then you think about wordplay as like, okay, well, this is chess.com, but for word game enthusiasts versus chess enthusiasts. And then what are all the elements you can bring?
As a reminder to people, chess.com is like a huge business, like multi-billion-dollar valuation.
We talked about this when we talked about chess also, which was what other things are like chess. And we had said Sudoku, and I think we had said like a Scrabble or whatever. Word games are all,
yeah.
I think they're almost as big, if not, I think I wouldn't be shocked if it was bigger than chess. I wouldn't be shocked. I would be more shocked if it was like a 10th the size as the chess enthusiast audience. I would guess it's like in the range, and there's very few games that are in the range. And so that alone makes it an interesting comp in that sense.
So the lessons you draw from chess.com, right, which is a relatively straightforward, is you have like a rating system, right? You have leaderboards and scores, you have challenges, you have social connections where you make your friends on chess.com so you can invite, like it's all the things, right? That these are very easily translatable into other games like wordplay, right?
Right.
So anyway, so we'll pick and choose as far
Can
as
I give you one little feature I think would be cool? Because leaderboards are always this problem in general where a leaderboard's cool for the top 10 people, and then for everybody else on Earth, it's like, oh, great, I'm player number 39,000. Fantastic, right? Yeah. And so there's all these, like, I kind of studied this once. I was like, who solved this problem? And there's really three models that work. One is more like chess, and games do this. They create a rank system. So it's not your number 80,000 in the world, because that doesn't mean anything, but you go from bronze to silver to gold to platinum to master to grandmaster. And like you just compete to get your own level up within that to get to your next badge. And that's like the karate belt method, let's call it. Then there's the next one, which is your rank matters when it's with people you know that are either your friends, your school, your city, something like that. So you can kind of hack a proximity based thing. And then the third one, which I think is somewhat interesting, which is it doesn't even matter what my rank is, but there's something cool. Like if I go to Wordplay right now, I feel like I'm alone in this experience. I don't know that there's 3,000 other people solving this right now. And also I don't know, I bet you there's like some celebrity that plays Wordplay every day, right? Like I bet you like, I don't know, Mila Kunis plays this every day. And I think there's something really cool to like sort of like a Stars, They're Just Like Us vibe of like, if I kind of knew that X known people have solved it for today, that's just kind of interesting. And it's kind of like, makes them more approachable. So I almost wonder if there was like a little feature like that, where if you're a blue check type person, you could kind of like auth in and be like, I either solved it or failed today. And you could just have that as a little board. Anyways, those are my three random feature ideas for you. That's a good
idea. The one of the things, and it's not surfaced on the front, this is a really good idea, but one of the things I do have is in the comment, there's commentary. So as you're playing, the software will kind of give you little kind of sometimes snarky, sometimes fun messages, sometimes data. It's like, oh, you're one of the few people that's ever guessed this particular word. That's not a very common word to use. Congrats, good for you. Or this is the 1,000th time you've used this particular word. Points for consistency. So there's this kind of running commentary, but I like that idea of like just kind of front loading. It's like, here's a number of people that have solved this game. I give you stats at the end of the game. It's like, only 14% of the people or players solved this particular word. And it took them on average 4.7 guesses. So yeah.
Can I throw two more at you? This is now my future brainstorm for you. If you ever played Candy Crush,
there's nothing more than like an entrepreneur. There's nothing more than like a person who has no stake saying, "Hey, have you thought about this? Why haven't you done this yet?"
There's nothing less entertaining on a podcast than me telling you features for wordplay, but fuck it. It's our podcast. We can do what we want. If you ever played Candy Crush, they do this thing, which was so stakes matter a lot in stories or any kind of like adventure. And so like, if you open up a pack of warheads and if you see a black one, that's the really crazy one. Candy Crush does this in their games where if you start a level, it says this is nightmarishly hard, or this is a, medium hard or whatever. So I'd like to see that in the wordplay when I come into every day. I'd like to know if this is a nightmarishly hard puzzle or if this is just okay. It gets me amped up for my play.
That's a really good idea. And then combining that with your tiering idea, and then we can move on. But so imagine we had a tiering mechanism that you can go from bronze to silver to whatever to ninja level. Right now, when you start the game, you get a random word and other people get random words as well. And there's a daily word that everybody plays together. But imagine that like as you move up the rank, it gets harder. It's like now you're a level that few have achieved, let alone solved, right? It's like no one even gets here. You're here. And then do things for streaks. It's like, okay, well, you're the first person to have solved like 50 games in a row at this tier or something like that. I think that'd be fun. So
one last one I think you'll like, which is you are a fan of crypto, and I think you would, if you like the crypto ethos, and I think if you could advance the cause of crypto, that would be like a win for you personally. So we gave out this milk money grant, this like milk for the milk road. We gave out like a bunch of money to people just to build whatever they want. And one guy, this guy Dave, he built this thing that was like a Wordle game, but it was with crypto, which was just you play Wordle as is, but if you solve it, you could win like one Matic, like a tiny amount, or like. Then he was like playing with different ideas. He's like, there's actually 100 Matic jackpot for the day. And like only winners are eligible for the jackpot. You might get it or you might not. And so you got a bunch of people connecting a wallet. So I think what you could do is you could actually just add that into wordplay, which is, by the way, there's a $100 a day prize paid out in Matic or whatever. All you got to do is create a little wallet here and like you might win. And so I think a bunch of your avid players would create a crypto wallet where they might not otherwise. So you'll onboard new people into the world of crypto. And you could create a dead simple either funnel them to MetaMask or create a dead simple crypto wallet that will become like the play to earn crypto wallet, for the future. Anyways, that's I will now stop talking
also
about
a good idea. Yeah. By the way, so I actually added the ability to connect your Diesel wallet and your Ethereum wallet to Wordplay. And my idea at the time was, instead of turning ads off, I'm going to make that the pot. And so as ad revenue accumulates until the next payout, whatever it happens to be, and then it's like, the top 10 winners are going to get this distribution, and let's start over again. So not to make money, but we'll have money coming in through AdSense, and then we'll kind of
a sustainable play to earn game. That's awesome. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah.